start the recording because I think there are other presenters to come. Or do we have all our presenters here? Marcel, Wendy, Andrew, Renee. Is there anybody else who should be presenting today? I hope the rest of the class is coming along to hear you and to support you.
I think Noel should be in.
Right, Noel is presenting as well. And he was happier for this time.
Yeah, he and I got together yesterday, so.
Right, so, but while we wait on him then, and since we're going to do a marathon this evening, I really wanted to get your impression of the course. How has it been for you? What could I have done better? How could we have made it a better experience? Just anything that you can give me. I did give you notice to think about that for this evening. So while we wait on the others, who wants to start?
I think we are our worst critic, and and I think that the class was great. I, however, was if I was able to put like everything into this class, it would have been a wonderful, excellent class. But because of everything going on, I kind of had to split my time, and I wasn't really able to put 100% into this class, which is pretty much unacceptable to me. I'm pretty mad at myself for that. But I did get a lot out of this class. I've learned a lot from this class still, and I just I wish I would have been able to put 100% into this class, but I wasn't, and I criticize myself for that. And but overall, I don't think you did anything wrong. I think the class was wonderful. I loved the speakers. When I was able to make the chat rooms, I really enjoyed the speakers and listening to what they had to say. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Wendy. And I'm sure every single class member here, without a bribe, would say that, yes, we're our worst critics, and you're your worst critic. I've had the privilege of working with you before today. And so I do know that your high academic standards, and I'm sure Dr. Hurt, who has just joined us, would say, but trust me, you are the only one who knew that you did not put your all in. And you provoked enough. And one of the things that was the hallmark of this class was the variation in views, which is excellent because it allows us to think outside of our own boxes. And at the end of the day, we know in more concrete ways why we believe what we believe, right? And we did it in a way that I liked, that nobody tried to make somebody seem irrelevant, for the want of a better word. And that's where adult learning takes on a new meaning. We're willing to listen, we're willing to make meaning, to seek clarification. And so I don't walk away from this thinking you were not at your best. I'm thinking that, led by the Holy Spirit, you made a contribution that made us all think. And I thank you for that. Guys, if you're just coming in, Dr. Hurt, welcome. I really thought that while we're waiting on the others to join us, because this would have been a lengthy Zoom session, we would begin to get feedback on the class. So we're starting with the feedback. As soon as I see Noel in, and if I think I saw Damaris, but I do know she's going to be having a very unstable internet. But as soon as we run through those of us who are here, we're going to go into prayer and then let you get off with your presentation. I was just using the time to begin to get this feedback on the class. So welcome, Dr. Hurt. Who else would like to make a brief comment? And I would encourage you to also post that in the classroom for me, because it all helps. And you will have the class evaluation. And this is not intended to usurp the evaluation. It was just the kind of direct feedback that allows us to speak to each other, as against to fill a form out and you really, an anonymous form, and you're not able to probably comprehend all of what is being said. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to make a contribution? Feedback?
Dr. Yvonne, I first of all, I must say I enjoyed doing this course. I really appreciate how it has allowed us and allowed me to be honest with ourselves, with myself, and to be more focused as it relates to my gifting and where God wants to take me and what He wants to do. And so I think this course provided the opportunity for me to engage in deep introspection and self-examination going forward. It allowed me to discover some good things about myself and some things that I need to work on, even as I relate with those who colleagues and so on that I work with, because sometimes you might feel that you're doing a good job and you're a nice person, but basically there are things about us that need to be ironed out. Mm-hmm. And so we could be more impacting and more attractive as we attempt to relate to people. And I appreciate the wisdom gained from yourself and Dr. Hort. As I was going through the book reviews and the comments, I think I have learned a lot, and I intend to and I always do, every course I do with Baki. My wife, when she sees me, she calls me Baki. she refers to me as, because in the morning, very early in the mornings, I'm on the computer, and when she passes, she looks, she said Baki again. Late in the night, Baki, so she would call me Mr. Baki. And so sometimes, the conversation is always about what I've learned about at Baki, even with my colleagues and so on. And so the course, this particular course, personal assessment, has really helped me to really examine myself more closely, even as I attempt to work with people to get things done for the sake of the Lord. So I am happy that I've been a part of this course.
I'm glad it worked for you, Marcel. I was interviewing a new student this morning, and she said that she was impacted by her pastor who was studying at Baki and the impact that his studying had on him. And then she felt this was the place she needed to study. So my prayer is that I will be seeing several of the students coming in from the Ministry of Education in Guyana.
Well, I remember I made a promise to Dr. Randy White when I was down in Fresno that I am going to be one of the persons in Guyana to help to recruit and to help, because I see what we do, the perspectives of leadership, they're quite different from what we know. And and what we see other organizations practice. As a matter of fact, you may not know, but I'm sure you're familiar with Wilbert Lee because he told me he graduated with you. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Messiah. I used to be his PLC, and I did a lot of work with him, and so I'm here now. So that's That's how it goes.
Testament, that's testament. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And you spoke to the limitations and you haven't told me about my limitations yet. So, but I guess I need to run on to the others. When you get to it, you can mention it, right? All right. I know one of them is that I don't always smile, right?
Well, not lately.
Okay, okay. Anyone else? Anyone else would like to? Damaris, yeah, I see your comment. It was excellent. My first class, great experience. Thank you, Damaris. I learned so much about myself. It was real personal assessment. Yes, I really wanted to be that. And yes, you had lovely classmates. I think you're all saying that to each other and the Zoom room speakers. Thank you so much. And thank you for encouraging us. And don't forget to tell us where we could have done it better. So I heard from Damaris, we all did. You saw that. Anyone else want to run it through? Andrew and Renee, you're the only two left, so you could get a minute each. Andrew, Renee? If you're speaking, you have not unmuted.
Okay. Right. Hold on. Let me turn off the fan. All right. For me, it was a rough journey, but the greatest thing, I'm at the end. And I've really learned a lot. And for me, especially now at work, I do a lot of reflection because now it's orientation for the students and staff, and I have a whole lot of presentation to do throughout the day. So I give them like tips, reads throughout leadership and servant leadership. And I'm just like quiet till everyone asks me what is going on with me. And I'm just saying that I'm now connect more with God and all of that. And they're saying that they can see the change and all of that. So I do a lot of reflection and looking back to ensure that I manage my time well. And that's what I'm working towards. So I'm happy that I did not give up when I want to drop the course, because I know that this is my calling. And I just have to just let God lead the way and just manage my time. Although once I finish this session, I have a meeting at 10 o'clock to go to.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you. We hope we'll finish on time, and I'll bear that in mind with your presentation. And I know that everybody will work within the ambit of the time you have been given, which is the 10 minutes. We'll do our best to get you to fit in there as well. Andrew, do you want to put in your 2-piece and then begin with your presentation afterwards? But just allow us to say prayer in between.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a very valuable class. I feel like it's not over by a long shot. The best part is still to come. Writing and hopefully a few meetings with you and Brad.
Mr. President?
Renee, you need to mute. Or let me mute you in. Oh yes, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, the reading material was fantastic as usual. I think the second half of the class discussion stuff, like the last 2 weeks, I somehow I just didn't connect with it as much as the first few weeks.
Yes.
It seemed a little more academic and less self-assessment based. So I guess I didn't really connect with that real well. And I would say my only critique for the professors would be to see you guys jump into the discussions more. It just felt like sometimes your engagement in discussions was a little bit token. So I'd like to see more of you guys throwing in your 2 cents worth more often. But other than that, I think it was a great class.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback, because it also allows me to explain my approach to personal assessment in particular, right? I have to constantly remember that this personal assessment is not my assessment, it's yours.
Right.
And I honor your assessment. I would have loved to be able to refer you to contextual readings and so on, and to provoke you to think in opposing ways in some of those discussions, right? But I particularly wanted to refrain from my views, right? And because I want to honor it as being your reflection, right? And in a way where we don't determine that you're wrong or right. I mean, when it becomes, it's an encourager moment, and that's what I know you call token, right? But it is easier for me to be the encourager in this context than for me to be the critique of what you say and to come down on one side or the other. What I really wanted to do sometimes was to provoke you some more, and I ought to have done that. And there were times when I myself did not spend as much time with you in the weeks as I ought to, and I take full responsibility for that.
I wish you had provoked me more, because that's my whole point for being here.
Yeah. But it has to be well thought through, though, and I think we will still get an opportunity to do that.
I hope so. That's the way I learn best, is when I'm challenged.
All right, Damaris is saying that it would be great if the syllabus could be more specific with the book report instruction. Oh, okay, yes. I know that Dr. Hurt has gone and encouraged you in many ways how to make your book report go beyond what is in the syllabus. And I received that criticism. You're not the only person to have mentioned it. And this is something we need to go back to BGU to say, okay, would you want to? Because as you can see, if you've gone through several courses, this is the exact format of the book report in all courses. So it's not the change that I can make to the syllabus without it having a wider overall impact. But I do know that he has mentioned ways in which your book report could have been more outstanding for the one, or more academic. What I do know he has also assured me of is that your grade was not impacted by his comments, because he was aware of what you were asked to do in the book report. Do you want to add anything there, Dr. Hurt?
Yeah, thank you. When you read in the syllabus, the book report format instructions are quite general. And I have an expectation that the book report is analytical, and if you're in an academic environment, you write as if it's an academic document, and that's why I was providing all that advice. If you're writing a reflection journal, then that becomes more expressive. But the book reports are analytical. They're the kinds of things that, if you're in the doctoral program, that will flow into your literature review if you find books that are relevant to what you do. And you're going to find that you can't just cite one thing, but that you're expected to cite multiple sources and synthesize some conclusions out of that. So the book report provides excellent practice for that kind of mindset.
Thank you, Dr. Hurt. I again, guys, will speak to and address this with the BGU fraternity as it relates to how it could be more explicit as Dr. Hurt is defining analytical, because I know the next thing you will say to me is that in your other courses, you have not been asked to do that. And so that too becomes a valid response. So I want as much as possible, I dream for a level of standardization. So I will take this up. And I will try to see if we can have the expectation clarified even further as we go along. All right? That having been said, could we just now pray for our presenters and let them get going? All right? I haven't seen Noel in yet. I'm not quite sure what's happening. Is he here? But I have seen that Dr. Wesley is with us, so this is a good chance to ask him to open in prayer, and then we go into the presentations.
Thank you.
Welcome, Kurt.
Hello, everyone. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this wonderful opportunity we have to continue to look at you, our Creator. Look at the wisdom that you made everything with. And ask you, God, how have you made each one of us? And what do you want us doing in your creation? How have you uniquely made each one of us, Father, to serve out in your will and in your way? God, I want to thank you in advance for the wisdom you've been guiding each of the students with, as they look for you in their lives, as they look for you around you and what you're sharing with them and what you're revealing. I pray now for their ability to speak, our ability to hear and understand and give feedback for this wonderful journey of the life of love. We look forward to what you're going to do tonight. Protect our technology and our ability to understand. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dr. Wesley. Now, over to you, Andrew, and you will be allowed to share screen, so you will notice, why am I trying to tell you what to do? You are already the professor in this regard.
I'm working on it here.
Go straight ahead.
Let's see. If I can get it to start, we'll be good to go. How's that? Can you see what I'm seeing?
Wonderful, yes. We're seeing the sawdust you washed from your face.
Okay. All right. So this is only the second time I've done a PowerPoint in my whole life. So forgive me if I have glitches, but here we go. So I've entitled this, at least for the moment, that Towards a More Intentional Future. And I will probably write a little bit about that in my paper, but I want to start with chapter 1. These are the readings that have been probably the most significant for me during this course. I think Parker Palmer's work, Courage to Teach and Let Your Life Speak, were probably the most profoundly impacting books, especially the Let Your Life Speak. Os Guinness, The Call, Bill Hendricks, The Person Called You, Culture Making by Andy Crouch was very impacting. I gleaned a lot from that. Leadership and Self-Deception, and I'm actually currently reading The Anatomy of Peace as a follow-up to that, because it's got a lot of good material in there. And then there was a lot of good stuff in Bill George's True North. So I will continue to add some some stuff from those to my paper. Chapter 2, Calling and Life Vision. Let's see, I need to move. I can't read it because I've got all these little things in the way here. Excuse me a second. There we go. So my life process for the last probably 8 or 9 years has been really kind of a dismantling, and I feel like right now I'm moving from a dismantling period into more of an assembly period. So dismantling a lot of old ways of thinking, and obviously that will continue, but taking those, I used an analogy earlier in the class about feeling like a motor car, all the pieces laid out on the floor, and then Jesus and I are walking around selecting the ones that are the ones that He made, and not the ones that I added to make a mess. So as far as my gifting goes, I'm a creator and a builder. I love to make things. I'm a challenger. I tend to challenge systems and organizations and things around me. I don't necessarily just take things at face value, but like to dig down to the heart below the surface. And some of that challenging has come out of my own history and dysfunction, but I am working really hard with the Lord to see how that can actually become a positive and useful trait. And toward that, just trying to allow tenderness and grace to emerge from His work in me, so that what I do is done that way. And then the other part of what I love to do and what I'm passionate about is mentoring and calling out gifting and goodness in other people, especially in my work and in the community that I'm involved in. So the things that have influenced these things in my life is, years ago I read and still continue to read periodically from Oswald Chambers' book, My Utmost for His Highest. And one of his statements in there was that God has not called us to be anything, to any particular task, but He's called us to be His very own. Pray to the Lord of the harvest that He will send you out. And that statement has definitely impacted much of my thinking over the years, my movement towards understanding what it means to be His very own, and then how I live out of that. As I said earlier, dismantling unnecessary childhood survival systems is a huge deal for me right now. And having a lack of mentors in my life, as well as a vow I made when I was 17 that I would never need anybody again. Those things are being dismantled and reorganized in my heart so that I can take the way that God has made me and be more positively impacting in my community. Several years ago, God said that He was calling me to be a part of a healing community. And that is really beginning to happen here in our little town of Plain. There are many people in our community that believe that God's doing something here in that realm. And so we are together moving towards that. And so that's a huge influence on my thinking and my engagement with my community. I already spoke to the readings earlier. And very influential in my life right now is the new mentors that God has brought into my life through BGU and through some new folks that have moved into our community. My sphere of influence, there's a photo from my deck, and you can pretty much see my community down there under the rainbow. And I'm just a small town guy and very happy to be so. I have no desire to global influence or anything in the city. So as far as my sphere of influence goes, my teaching work, both handwork, what I teach in my wood shop, the classes that I teach periodically, and then the heart work, the young folks that I mentor, the guys that I work with, and moving into some new opportunities in the next months in our church community, and being able to do some heart work with folks. Every once in a while, God takes me off on an international assignment. I've been to the Congo, Costa Rica, the Philippines, and I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about those right now, but I will write about them some in my paper. They've been very interesting assignments, and I hope to have more of that. I have a heart to see teaching people in disadvantaged communities skills that can help them to earn a living, and to have some sense of self-value coming out of that, hopefully. My wagon guests, I have a fair amount of influence and impact with the folks that come and stay in my wagons. I'll definitely be writing more about that in my paper. That's a fairly significant part of my life right now. My customers, many of my customers become friends and end up in long-term relationships. And I feel like it's really, really important, the ministry and the influence that I have on the people who I get to work for. And then my students, both the interns that work with me and the people that come and take classes with me. So my current ministry, building things and building people. The relationships that I'm involved in that are important to me right now, BGU obviously is taking up a significant amount of my time, and hoping to connect with more folks in some mentoring roles in BGU. I have some pretty significant friendships in our community here that we're spending a lot of time together. In fact, we did the gifting meeting, and several of those folks in that meeting have decided they want us to do something like that for them. So I'm excited about that process. Young people becoming more involved in mentoring some of the younger folks in our community. Hi, Noel.
Hello. Good evening. Sorry I'm late.
No worries. Mute yourself and you can jump in after I'm done.
Noel, I'm sorry. I just muted you because I wanted Andrew to go on.
So another important relationship is what I call the ecclesia, or the body of Christ, the healing community. So I have two of those that I'm significantly involved in. One in the city that's about 45 minutes from us, a group of guys that I've been meeting with for about 7 years now, and just the different impacts that that group of guys has in the community. And then also our own community here in Plain. Those are really important relationships to me right now that I'm investing a lot of time and energy in. Spiritual formation, I would say the most significant thing that has happened to me in the last 6 years is coming to a realization of what it means to live loved, to be the beloved Son of God, with his smile always on me. And I wrote that 3 times because it's made such a significant change in the way that I live my life, how I see myself, the value that I have for myself, and flowing out of that for others. And what's growing out of that in me is a greater tenderness, compassion, and grace towards other people. Lots of work still to be done there. I think more wisdom and a greater ability to trust others, to have input and impact in my life. And then for myself, just challenging self-serving structures that I put together in my own life, ways of surviving the world that I grew up in that have become obsolete in my life now. I see them as things that were necessary to get me here, but are no longer necessary for my future. So learning to drop those and challenge those in myself and also in the communities community around me. As far as my academic plan goes, gosh, I have no idea. I mentioned in an earlier post that I tend to fly by the seat of my pants. Not much of a planner unless it's absolutely necessary. But I am feeling that it's time to sit down with some folks from BGU and figure out what the rest of my academic plan might look like. I use the word unfolding because 4 months ago I had no idea I was doing this, and now I'm in the middle of it, and it's slowly beginning to unfold. And it's really the unfolding is based on promises that God has made to me, and I see how what he's leading me into right now with this program is actually beginning to help put hands and feet to some of those promises. So the things that are important to me that I want to grow in is tools to grow my own ability as a mentor and the teaching side of my business, how to expand my business in a way that I can begin to take on more apprentices and be able to do more mentoring and teaching. And then just my own, what I would call interpersonal wisdom, or at least the ability to interact with people in life-giving ways. And then to gather around myself a strategic team that will help with that. So those are important for me. So in conclusion, the readings continue to contribute to growth and self-awareness and new insights into my own gifts and how to use them more effectively. I'm loving how God is providing me opportunities right now to apply what I'm learning in practical ways daily, and I'm discovering new levels of joy in who I am and how God has made me, and how that can engage the world around me and serve people more positively. And I continue to desire to leave behind old ways of thinking about and responding to my world, being less self-protective and more comfortable with vulnerability. And that's that for me. You're muted, Yvonne.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I'm telling you thanks, and I'm asking you to keep your PowerPoint nearby. I'm going to go to Dr. Hurt and Dr. Risley first to get their feedback, comments, questions, encouragement, and then I'll open up for the rest of the team who may have insights or just encouragement for you. So Dr. Hurt, do you want to kick that off as you normally do?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Andrew. As you've interacted with your mentors and reflected out loud with them about these things that were in your presentation, did they agree? Did they disagree with you on anything?
Andrew, if you're speaking, you're mute. Still muted. I see your note, Anthony. Good to have you. Nonetheless, you missed Andrew's presentation, or maybe you didn't. You might have heard some of it. Andrew, did you hear Dr. Hurt's question?
Yes, I did. Sorry about that. I got stuck in the PowerPoint screen, couldn't figure out how to get out of it.
Okay.
My PLC is really still forming. It's been difficult to get everybody together in the same place. We've managed to meet twice so far, so I have not been able to share this presentation with them yet. I hope to do that.
All right. Well,
yeah.
as you move forward and as you work these things through, and this will be important for everyone else to keep in mind, at an early stage when we're reflecting on these things, we're going to make what what I call mom and apple pie statements. Okay, they're in the U.S. We have a slang term called mom and apple pie, which is all things good, pure, and beautiful. And the idea is you really can't disagree with those kinds of statements. Everything is good. Everything is that's exactly the right direction. Nobody can really disagree with it. What you want to think about refining your statements to is get to a point where your mentors can at least logically disagree with you, because then you have a focus. That means you're giving serious thought to how you'll do things, to what you need. You're really bringing things into focus, and that's where you get to a point of your mentors, your PLC, being able to logically disagree with you. Not that they will, but that you have enough focus that if somebody sees something different, they can. So an analogy would be if you're going to build a house, everybody agrees that it shouldn't leak. Everyone agrees that it should have a foundation. There's some things that everybody would agree on, but then when you start getting into more detail and into more focus, people can start to disagree if there's a logical opportunity to disagree with maybe what it looks like, maybe what materials you'll use. So that's one thing that you want to be driving towards as you think through your calling is get it to a focus and clarity where people can agree or disagree. We're reading a book right now by Dietrich Bonhoeffer called Living Together, and he had a calling to in the 1930s in Germany. He had a calling to support the church and encourage them not to support Hitler. But then his calling got clear enough to where there could be actual disagreement with it. His friends told him he should carry out his resistance from England or the United States, not in Germany. And others believed, and he believed, he should go back into Germany in order to support the resistance there. All right, so he got to a point where people could logically disagree with him because they thought that his calling ought to go in a certain way. So that's one thing to be moving towards as you reflect on these things is get it to a clarity and focus so that there can be some logical disagreement with it.
Thank you, Dr. Hurt. Andrew, any feedback on that? Any response?
That was very generalized, so I'm not actually sure what you're referring to at all. Sorry. I mean, be critical of what I presented, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean,
can you put your slides back up?
Sure. No, come on.
Okay, so let's walk through them. Let's look at calling and life vision. Okay, so that's really a journey statement that of where you think you're going. Let's go to the next one. Influences. That's those influences are similar to a lot of people will experience, and so but they do help you move forward in your journey. Let's go on to the next one. So let's see, let me move this.
Yeah, we'll go to that.
There we go. Okay, so heart work and handwork. It's not clear specifically where you're at right now, and you can probably build more focus as you go forward and think through it even more. What exactly is hard work and handwork? That your PLC and your mentors can work with you on and talk specifically about. Okay, let's see. What's the next one? So international assignments, they clearly had an influence, and I think as you think through this, develop it, it's going to become clear how all of these things specifically led you to this point, and later on in your journey, how they contributed to getting you to whatever stage you're at. When I reflect back on my career, for example, I've been getting to a point where I can specifically point out things that my specific experiences play into what I'm doing today, and I think that's where you're headed with bringing up examples like the international assignments. What's the next one? Okay, when you're talking about students, I'm assuming that there's give and take with the students as well, and the students will eventually, you'll be able to point to the students and say they influenced me exactly in these ways, and it's really less a critique of the presentation, but more an observation that as you move forward, you want to continue to bring clarity to this, specifically how these influences are playing into what you're doing today, and maybe next year how they played into bringing you to that point next year. And the same thing will hold true with the relationships. Continual reflection on the specifics of those things. And at a certain point, you'll start to formulate ideas of what you should be doing in specific enough terms that people can see, these are your ways and means, that you're thinking about the resources you want to commit to it, and that discussion becomes even more specific. Okay. So building things, building people, that's, you can probably, as you move forward, continue to refine that, and especially building people you're probably going to form some clear ideas about how you want to do that, and how you want to interact with people. You'll develop the Andrew Campbell way of doing things, and bringing up people, and that's an ongoing process. And again, you'll start to see how you'll start to be able to point to very specific things as to how all these relationships not only took you to a specific point in your life, in your calling, but also how specifically you're influencing them, and later when you talk to them, you'll start to see some specific influences that you've had on them. So the academic plan, as you develop your sense of calling, you'll get a clearer picture of what specifically you need in the way of tools and interpersonal wisdom, and you'll start to get more ideas about who should be on your team as well, because that'll be important to give you advice. So the idea is just keep clarifying, keep getting more specific, and the rule of thumb that I like to use is that somebody, you want to get to a point where somebody could logically disagree with you on that, on whatever it is you're talking about, and that's an indicator as to how clear and specific you've been getting in understanding your calling. So.
Thank you, Dr. Hurt. I'll move on to Dr. Risley and Andrew. Keep your eyes on the chat. I have invited your classmates to just give you the feedback in the chat so that in the interest of time we can again move on a little bit faster. So Kurt, over to you. Have we lost Kurt? Is he here? He seemed to have stepped off the call. Yeah, I'm not seeing him in the list of participants at all. Andrew, I have just one question. Maybe I've had the benefit of sharing with you a little more, and I feel I so understand where you're at. Living Loved was written 3 times.
Yep.
Significance. That one I did not grow into. Why did you do that 3 times?
Why did I do it 3 times? Because I would say it is probably the most influential idea in my life right now, and has been for probably 4 or 5 years.
Living Loved.
Yes.
Living Loved as the receiver, the giver, both. And how does it play into your personal assessment?
So when if we go back to the spiritual formation class that Dr. Brad Smith did, he made a statement that, and I paraphrase because I can't quote it exactly, but the idea is that a lot of times in our Christian journey, we can use spiritual formation as a way to get to God. Mm-hmm. And if I look at the first 40 years of my life, almost everything that I did was designed to be good enough for God. Mm-hmm. And then he began to reveal to me that I had no need to do that because I was his beloved. And I can tell you a story of the moment that revelation came, and it completely changed the trajectory of my life. When I suddenly understood that the look on his face when he looks at me is not a frown, but a smile of absolute delight. Okay. And so for me, living into that. Mm-hmm. that becomes the foundational place out of which I live and out of which I move into other people's lives is a completely significant
and you said it. That last sentence said it. And I understood it. Right? The foundation, the basis on which you are relational, you know, you're receiving and you're giving. I thank you for that. I know the struggle between academia and discovery is pretty much a part of this current journey. And my prayer for you is that somewhere we will find meaning and see where they merge, and that this whole journey, which is an exciting journey, I think For some of us, the journey begins with a knowing, and we remain in that place of knowing. For others of us, it is a disorienting dilemma until we get to a place of rest, or maybe we don't get to a place of rest, but we feel we're drawing closer to understanding, right? And I see your trajectories as coming to terms with and drawing closer to an understanding that brings the living love into perspective. And I pray you strength as you do that journey. Yes, there are going to be the theoretical side. The first half of the question that asks for the definition and not ask necessarily for you to express its work in you, but how you understand it. I know you resist those parts, but there is a process, and you're going to work it through. Be encouraged, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for being as open as you have been. And Damaris has captured it nicely as well. Time is on us. Who wants to be the next presenter?
Okay,
Wendy? Renee?
right.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead, Renee.
Okay.
What you will do is that you will activate your banner at the bottom of your screen. You will see share screen. It will take you to your desktop or wherever you have your PowerPoint, and then you will share it with us.
Yes, I'm
And
doing it.
Noel is also sending you a thought.
I'm not sharing. Right. All right.
Are you seeing the share screen? Yes,
Yes.
you're coming on up. You're coming up.
Okay. Okay, let me
We're now seeing your screen, so you may go ahead, Renee.
Hold on, I just turned on my phone. I realize everybody calling me because I'm actually on the TV, so just sorry about that. All right. How do I get to? All right, you see my screen, Doctor?
Yes, we are seeing your screen, and we're seeing your, I think you need to go to your very first PowerPoint. If you click on that, we will see that. Click on the PowerPoint itself. We are at spiritual formation, which I think is not your first PowerPoint.
All right, I need to get to the first slide, which is
yes,
calling.
we now have you at your first slide. Go ahead.
All right. All right, my team is, good night, everyone. Man,
Good night.
Good night. Right, so for my presentation, my final presentation, my team would be transforming young minds and creating responsible citizens through paramilitary techniques and leadership session. My goal to empower and transform individuals through a transformational and biblical framework so that they can make healthy choices and become a better leader. By the end of the program, individuals will be able to apply the transformational and biblical principle and to be able to apply them in their daily life in order to survive in the 21st century. Target group, developing Christ-like character in individuals aged 13 to 17. Calling and life vision. Prayer and community involvement. My personal prayer life and my involvement in community projects play a major role in unearthing my calling to continue to empower young persons through paramilitary techniques and leadership sessions. From the teaching and learning session of the personal assessment course, I created a personal development plan that will be used as a guide, as a direction map for the individuals that I will be working with. Core values: respect, responsibility, accountability, kindness, and service are the core values that I use to transform my life. I will be using performing arts as a tool to demonstrate the core values to the individual that I will be working with. Communication. I will be partnering with different stakeholders, and by doing this, it will bring a holistic approach for a sense of belonging and self-awareness towards my development plan. Life Skill Manual. This is a manual that consists of the various components such as stewardship, servant leadership, pastoral care that will enable individuals to look to God to fulfill their purpose. I think I need to put in there. Current ministry. I'm an educator and I use motivational topics to encourage my students. I'm the Deputy Commandant for Dynamic Cadet Corps, and I'm developing the organization in a positive way, and within the next 5 years, I will be working with the organization full-time. While doing theology of work and personal assessment course, I realized that my calling is to establish a learning center to conduct workshop for spiritual and natural development of people, to continue to impact them through prayers and empowerment session. 2 Peter 1 verse 10. Therefore, brethren, be all more diligent to make your calling and election sure. For if you practice these things, you will never stumble. Spiritual formation. I reflect and realize that the Lord will allow me to go through difficult times, but I must not give up, and at the end I will become victorious. I will continue to let Jeremiah 29 verse 11 be my guide. This has allowed me to fulfill my purpose and walk in my God-given potential. I am no longer fearful, but as Proverbs 28 verse 1, declare the righteous and as bold as lion. Relationships. I will continue to build my relationship with positive persons around me so that they can give me their support and make contribution when I'm conducting my presentation to young people. I will also build a closer relationship with the Lord through prayer and worship. Academic plan. For my next academic course, I will use in the arts to transform the city, transformation leadership. I will use different persons to mentor me along my journey so that I can continue to impact the lives of young people through paramilitary performing arts and leadership sessions. And this will be used for my research project as an action research. To establish a learning center to conduct workshops for spiritual and natural development of people. And by doing all of these, working towards my long-term goals, finishing my doctoral study, I will do each of these presentations in a stage by stage to have a holistic approach, so that everything can become fruitful at the end with the support of different stakeholders.
I take it you're at the end of your presentation now, Renee?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Dr. Hurt, I will allow you to speak on Renee's presentation first, and then.
Thank you, Renee. Is this, is what you presented on, is that going to move forward into your doctoral work? I think you're in the doctoral program, right?
Right, my final, for my research.
So this will move, this will become your final project?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed that you already had some clear ideas of what you wanted to do. What does the city look like after you've empowered the youth?
Pardon?
In one of your earlier slides, you said you wanted to empower young people.
Right. So currently, I work with young persons, both in the prison system and in the community. So in Portmore, what I want to do now for Portmore is to work with young people and empowerment sessions, but looking towards stewardship, servant leaders, so to impact them into a Christ-like manner. So I will be working with the church also.
What do you see them doing?
Negative things that is not Christ-like. Most of the young person, especially now in the community next door, my community, they will sit on the corner, smoke, gambling, so that they are not going to school.
Okay.
So they are unattached because most of the school, because they've been disruptive students in the school system, they got expulsion, so they're not in school. So I'll be looking at this as a project.
Okay. Yeah. As you move forward, I think you'll find it helpful to be thinking in terms of outcomes as well. The resources and means seem fairly specific, and as you think through your calling, one of the components might be the outcomes that God's given you a vision for, and that should help you in the doctoral work. Because I would well, the one thing I suggest is that you, as you work on these kinds of studies, that you always have your doctoral project in the back of your mind, so that you're being productive with the time and effort that you put into all this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ert. Renee, I am viewing your presentation to be closer to the project you want to work on and more aligned to the delivery of that project than to the instructions that you have been given for this particular personal assessment course. And so I see clarity as it relates to the things you would like to see and what you feel called to do, but I didn't see as much clarity as it relates to the various chapters that you have been asked to comment on. One of the things you will see viewing last week's presentation and this one as well is that there is the incorporation of the reading you have been doing and how it is influencing your interpretation of the various chapters you've been asked to work on. I would love for you to ensure that in writing the project for personal assessment, where I can see you are very clear about what you are called to do, you're also responding to the other chapters along the line that have been discussed in the course and the readings that you have been given. So whether it is spiritual formation or communication or the other sections, all of which have been hit on each week in the course, you may want to align your responses to the guide that has been presented in the 9 weeks, right? And be careful that your interpretation of what you're asked to present is in alignment with that. I know that we meet, and when we meet, I probably will spend more time delineating this for you, and so that you can be clearer as to what I'm asking. But as you stay with us and as you listen to other presenters too, I'm sure that will provide some insights into how you could align your response in the chapters more closely to what is being asked of you in this course, as against your final dissertation topic, for which your project design methodology will also own a lot of that. So it is good that you're clear about what you want to do, but you also want to make sure that your response to the final projects for each course is aligned to what you're asked in the syllabus for each course. All right?
Okay.
And I will make better sense of that when we meet individually. Is there anyone who wants to make a point or two, encouragement or so to Renee before we move on? I know we're getting pretty late, but I still want to give you an opportunity to comment if you wish to.
Renee, this is Anthony. I just wanted to commend one organization to you as I was looking at your plan.
I'm not hearing you.
I'm sorry. I'll lean in. My microphone has a problem. I would commend to you the organization Drum Corps International. Our son was involved in that program. They're not a Christian organization, but they almost have a paramilitary sense to them, and they use the arts as a tool to influence youth and move them forward in the development of their skills and their character. So just a suggestion, as you look for other tools that are out there and programs that are out there, you might look into their model. Their website is dci.org. Thank you.
Let me write it down.
Anthony, could you just type that into the chat so that Renee can actually take it from that? And thank you for that contribution.
I will.
And if there are any other comments from you for Renee, please type it in the chat. Renee, focus on the chat a bit just to see what your fellow classmates have to say by way of encouragement, recommendations, and so on. Okay, thank you again. Could you stop sharing, Renee, so that you make way for the next presenter? You go back to the bottom. Thank you. Alrighty. Who is next? Who would like to go next?
Yvonne, maybe.
Okay, Marcel, you're on. Your share screen is there. Just go ahead and go right ahead.
No, go back to it.
If you over your cursor to the bottom of your screen, then you will see the banner. And share screen should come up as a green icon that says share screen. Once you select that, are you seeing that?
Just now, Yvonne.
Okay, good, good. Just relax it. It's there. One of the things to do is to exit your full screen, because when you do that, you tend to be able to see the banner at the bottom a little bit more clearly and quickly. Right, there you go. Wonderful. We're now seeing the beautiful desktop you have, so you now need to find that PowerPoint. Right, there you go.
Are we there?
You're right there.
Thank you for your patience. It's a Mac, so I'm learning to deal with the Mac.
Oh, and I wouldn't be able to help you with that at all.
All right. Let me go to, I have a quote here. This is a quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead. And so I'm attracted to this quote because even as I think about my project, I'm thinking about the importance and the significance of collaboration and cooperation in terms of bringing transformation. So it is against that background I'm attracted to this quote by Margaret Mead. Introduction. I'm inspired by the statement made by Rock and Van Dyke when they mentioned that when it comes to grace, geography matters, and the good news means to reach people at the point of their need. And so my inspiration has come from this, in the sense that I recognize that if I'm going to be a transformational leader, I need to dedicate my energies, abilities, and resources for radical and creative solidarity, which is characterized by sacrifice and celebration. And so if I could quickly look at the presentation at a glance, it talks about the same alignment that you spoke about under the different headings, ending with my academic plan. So I'll skip all of that and go straight into the business. Chapter 2, calling or life vision. Taking into consideration the discernment of the calling, I look back at what we presented in terms of strategic discernment and what it means. And so I'm looking at my calling in the context of what God really wants me to do, where He wants me to go, and the people that He wants me to help. So I'm focusing on that. My calling basically has also been discerned through prayer, and that had to do with positioning myself to hear from God regarding what He wants me to do. Community. As you know, I'm an education officer. I'm surrounded by a community of assistant chiefs, deputy chiefs, persons who operate at different levels of the school system, the head teachers, students, and so on. And therefore, I believe that it is important that if I am going to make the impact, I need to listen to them. And so in terms of community, I'm looking at listening and responding to the counsel and ideas of different persons, and you've seen them, you could see them there. Calling and life vision continue. I think it's also linked, my calling is also linked to my experiences, which has to do with making meaning in relation to my vision. When I look at my life experiences, I was appointed as Assistant Chief Education Officer and Director of Children's Ministry of my local church, and subsequently my appointment as Chief Education Officer with a greater span of influence. I believe basically God has called me to transform the landscape of literacy in my country, even as I look at the young people, our children at various levels not functionally literate. I believe that I have that responsibility to make that impact. And I personally believe that God has positioned me by virtue of raising me up through the different organizations and positions that I would have held as an education officer and also as a church leader. My spiritual and natural gifts. Here it is, I quoted Hendricks when he says everyone is born gifted, and that giftedness is the unborn core strengths and natural motivation, instructing us to do things that are satisfying and productive. And so from this vantage point, I would like to say that my gifts, spiritual gift is that of an evangelist. I think God has called me to really move in that realm, really to see lives transform, to see people change in terms of conduct and basically the expectations, how they should live as the word would want them to live. My natural gift, I think I'm gifted in research. I think I'm gifted in writing, and to some degree I'm articulate. And this is not what I'm suggesting of myself, but what persons would have said to me over the years. And therefore, I have listened to them, and I've tried to cement these giftings based upon my own feeling and what persons would have been saying to me. I think people are a reflection. People could actually, give you a reflection of who you are and, what you're capable of doing. I believe in terms of what I want to do in terms of transforming the landscape of literacy, my temperament is pivotal. I love people, and particularly I have a love for children. I think a very important aspect of my temperament has to do with my endurance. I'm the type of person who never give up. And I believe that, that God has really called me to fight for our children who would not have been functioning well in this particular area, that is being literate. My goal is to finish well, as advanced or advocated by the Apostle Paul. He talked about fighting the good fight, finishing the course, and keeping the faith. And so even as I embarked on this project, I want to finish well. Bob before talked about moving from success to significance. What I hope here is not to become caught up in being successful, but to be significant, because I think when you're caught up in success, you're not able to move to that next level where you could really be impacting on a large scale. And so I'm thinking along the line of before in his book, Halftime, moving from significance, moving from success to significance. So I'm thinking along those lines. I have had some struggles that I believe would have contributed significantly to the call and to what God, what God wants me to do. The Chinese crisis in Chinese, has several meanings, and one of the meaning of crisis in Chinese is that of opportunities. And so I remember being talked about, persecuted. I think I shared that with Anthony, when I actually was posted away from my family. And all of these things, if I had really succumbed, meant I would not have been in this position today to really live out the call and impact the lives I believe God has called me to. God has called me to change. So I recognize being talked about, and I hear Rennie talk about this all the time. And so I've always been trying to encourage or persecuted in many cases for being a Christian. There are lots of persons who feel that I should not even be in an office like the office of the chief education officer because of my persuasion. But I endured all of that, and here I am today. My area of cultural transformation is education and the values and beliefs that I see perpetuated in our system. And so I hope to change how people think and how they operate in terms of their values and their beliefs. The process of transformation, I think emphasis will be placed on the tenets of shalom leadership. That has to do with restoring things the way they ought to be, I think as a leader in the education system, I am strategically positioned to foster and to lead in that restoration in terms of what we've seen in the education sector. That is in relation to the number of children who are unable to read, particularly at the foundation level. Emphasis will also be placed on servant leadership. I think this type of leadership is critical, where if our teachers, the education officials, learn to put our children first, we will be more impacting in the lives of those children, rather than having a selfish approach or just looking at ourselves at pay, salaries, and so on. I think education, those who are into education need to recognize that it's really a vocation, it's a calling, and so money is not the main thing, or should not be the main thing when you decide to become an educator. And I want to instill these values through the shalom and servant leadership. Chapter 3 has to do with communication. In communication, I will look at the composition of my sphere of influence, which I intend to write about, and that is very vast. I'll do research on the status of literacy in the country, particularly at this grade 2 level that I'm interested in, the foundational level, because there's a saying that from grades 1 to 3 you learn to read, but from grades 3 and onwards, right up to university, you read to learn. And therefore, if our children cannot read to learn, obviously they will not be able to fulfill potential. And so that is always at the back of my mind. So I'm thinking about using data to improve student literacy performance. I'm also thinking about developing a holistic literacy training plan that will address the following topics. You could see the topics there. And this plan is what I think when I looked at communication, it talks about writing a book, but I think I'll be more interested in writing this literacy training plan that may be utilized by many persons. Who knows, maybe it goes far and wide. But in this plan, I'm thinking about including the critical elements of reading. I'm thinking about the modes of reading, the concept of the teaching of reading, getting non-writers interested in writing. And I think parents, they have a critical role to play, and some of them may not even understand the role that they play in terms of improving the performance of our children in literacy. I always say to people that in Guyana, a school day is made up of, I think, 5 hours, maximum 6 hours you could be in school, but there are 24 hours in a day, and therefore we have another 18 hours spent at home. And therefore it is important that parents understand that they could make good use of the children in terms of improving their performance in literacy during that lengthy time that they spend at home. I also intend to include in the literacy plan an understanding of the concept of shalom as a call to transformation, and of course servant leadership and organizational transformation. How servant leadership could actually impact the transformation of the organization, be it at the school level or even at the level of the Ministry of Education. And so some of these pictures that you're seeing here are indicative of some of the work that I've started and how I intend to move on. I've already started to network with some persons so that, a project like this could actually make the impact that it needs to make. My current ministry is that of evangelism, but I believe evangelism goes beyond just preaching the gospel. It talks about power sharing. I think Jesus made it very clear in Luke when he talked about, his work. So we have the aspect of power sharing, we have the aspect of liberating. And so what I intend to do is to connect the whole concept of evangelism to transformation and literacy, because I think it has to do with a type of empowering so that our children could really perform. Sometimes we just look at the gospel without looking at the total man. That is the body, the soul, and the entire total man. Sometimes we miss that. I believe if I'm going to, and the spirit, sorry, I believe if I'm going to finish well, as I posited earlier, a ministry philosophy is very important, and this was made very clear by Clinton when he talked about most people who finish well and complete what they've started, they actually have a ministry philosophy, obviously, which includes a mission statement and where you want to go, how you will dedicate your time, how you will structure yourself, your life, to ensure that you're able to achieve your objective. Chapter 5 deals with our relationships. And so I intend to write about the need for relationships, who relationships will be built with and why. I think it's important that relationships be built with your family first, because if the home front is not very strong, a leader could very well be ineffective. And so I will continue to build in this area. My pastor and mentor, very important that as a leader, lest you become a law unto yourself, that you submit to someone or some elder who could, who you could account to in terms of how you operate and so on. So I'm thinking about that. The Parent Teachers Association, because I'm talking about literacy. And so this is an organization where obviously if I'm talking about transformation, I'm talking about shalom leadership, I'm talking about servant leadership, I think they are a critical group of persons that I would need to have a relationship with. And of course, non-governmental organizations such as UNICEF and UNESCO. I think I was able to even speak to some of my teachings from Baki when I attended. I think I sent the notice that I was leaving for Bolivia. And so these are some of my fellow education officers, chief education officers and ministers of government across Latin America and the Caribbean, as I spent some time in Cochabamba, Bolivia. And so we were looking at how we could actually improve the performance of our children in literacy. So we were able to share some ideas. So I intend to continue in this vein and to build relationships with these persons. And this is by no means, this list is exhaustive, but these are some of the things that I could have quickly thought about moving forward. Chapter 6, spiritual formation. Dr. Smith, I think he did a good job when we went through the paces with him, and he said that the goal of spiritual formation is to increase our trust and dependence on God as the deepest motives of our hearts. And so I believe the areas that I will be focusing on or concentrating on has to do with transcendence, integrity, accountability, fairness. I think integrity is so critical in terms of you being trustworthy. I've discovered a long time is not how much you talk and even talk about, being open and so on, but it actually has to do with how you actually live and operate. It's not just talking, but it's how you operate. Your word is your bond. People tend to gravitate to you when you're a person of integrity, and so I intend to write on these areas here. Moving forward as I'm thinking about spiritual formation and fairness, of course. Let me talk about fairness quickly. I think this is something that I really need to focus on because I have this way, and I discovered this even as I went through the paces in this course. Sometimes you want things to be done and you don't pause to recognize people for what they've been doing, and you focus on what they've not been doing and so on. And so these are some of the things that I've noticed about myself, and I intend to strengthen, particularly in the area of fairness. I think I'm reasonably well in terms of having integrity and being accountable. I think I needed to be and transparent. I think I need to be a little fair even as I deal with people. Chapter 7, my academic plan. The electives, I've chosen servant leadership, poverty, diversity, and social justice, people development, and management. Why I've chosen these areas, I think all of these subject areas, they are interconnected, and they will give me the kind of knowledge, the kind of information, interaction that I would need to really make an impact in terms of transforming the lives of the children as attempt to build relationships. Mentoring relationships, because I'm by no means the epitome of wisdom and knowledge. I believe that I will attempt to connect with literacy specialists because the area of focus is literacy. Successful past educators, the elders who could actually guide me, give me the kind of help, assistance, information that I need to go forward as I attempt to impact the lives of those children. Senior motivational church leaders and motivational speakers. And so these are, this part will encompass my academic plan. Research areas will include literacy and its impact on social mobility of students. And of course, how stakeholders can contribute to improve performance of students in this area. Conclusion, I believe that literacy and education generally are inextricably bound to the defeat of what we describe in this country as the four horsemen of the apocalypse. This has been taken from His Excellency, the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Brigadier retired David Granger. He talks about the four horsemen of the apocalypse that he sees in this country. And these horsemen, he described them as poverty, crime, ignorance, and poor health. So I believe it is my conviction that God has positioned me as an agent of change that will result in the transformation of the education landscape. I think as our children become literate, people become more educated, we will be able to hone in and to defeat, if not totally, at least alleviate the impact that these horsemen would have had on our country. That is poverty, crime, ignorance, and poor health. I try to rush this through because I know for time. So I have some references and so on. So that's it for me, Dr. Yvonne.
Thank you, Marcel. I know there was something on CNN that looked at time, and we were realizing that time measured could mean different things to different people. And so I'm recalling that and listening to you and wanting to just commend you before I hand over to Dr. Hurt on the fact that you're looking at literacy and you spoke to research and consultation.
Yes.
And that's key to whatever we're called to do. That there is really a need for us to dig deep. There are countries who you know more than I do have really eclipsed their illiteracy status over time. And sure, we don't reinvent the wheel, but we are informed by what goes ahead of us. And I was happy to see that you've included that. I have a question for you. It kept plugging my mind because you kept saying finishing well. And one of the things that comes up and will come up in your final paper and your dissertation is evaluation. How will you know you have finished well? What we think about it in this way. This is what we've seen that has gone wrong. This is what we are doing about it. But how will we know when it is done? And it triggers. I do not necessarily want you to, to answer me. But I want you to contemplate that. All right? Because there are things that there are no end. Is how do I know it will be sustained?
Yeah.
And literacy would fall in one of those categories, sustaining, right? And so you want to ensure that when you are contemplating impact and you're evaluating your progress, whether it is a point in time or it is an invention that will continue to be sustained, replenished, renewed, revived, so that the ultimate goal is maintained. Very interesting. When I looked, as you spoke, at the literacy evaluations, although they stopped at 2011, I didn't see a recent one. You might be right. I wasn't expecting to see Russia at the top.
Mm-hmm.
But for our closer context, you know that Cuba, a country that is not known to be successful at most things, so we may want to evaluate those and to see if there are other things that we need to come alongside literacy. Because Cuba certainly had other things coming alongside literacy, some not so favorable, but the end product was a very literate nation, right? And so I thank you for that. Dr. Ert, I am going to be quick, so I step off that. And I thank you for your presentation. Damaris, I see that. Thank you for saying. Dr. Hurt, are you here? Would you want to comment on Marcel?
I'll be quick also. Thank you, Marcel, for the presentation. So it looks like you've been developing a picture of what God wants you to do. You made a statement in your earlier about shalom and servant leadership, and you talked about creating a culture of lasting change, and this is probably related to what Dr. Yvonne was mentioning. What have you been thinking about what that lasting change looks like? Have you done a lot of thinking on it and reading?
Basically, I believe one of the things that I see happening in our country is that we have a start and stop situation. And I think that results basically because we do not build a cadre of people who are able to carry on the work. And it's against that background I'm talking about building relationships with teachers, parents, stakeholders generally, who will understand that, look, transformation is possible. And if we work collectively, we could have a change in the status quo. But it has to do with a continuous building of a cadre of persons with a mindset that will move the process forward. Like I said, many times we start and we stop because you just have a few persons who are trying to carry a fight against a particular problem. And I believe if we have a multiplicity of people with the skills and the mindset well distributed, we could really see real transformation, not in pockets, but on a larger scale. In that context, I'm looking at change that is sustainable.
So it rather than specific results like percentages of children who can read, it sounds like you're focused on putting together a system of continuous improvement, so that the schools can perpetuate themselves in terms of things they do. Would that be fair?
No, I think you're quite correct, but I also believe that once the system in place, the results will speak for itself. I think many times we have no system, so we have no results that could actually be sustained. And so by focusing on the system, I think the corrective action could be taken that may impact the results.
Yeah. There is a book out, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called Influencer. It's very useful in envisioning a system and how you change it. It's called Influencer. The company that puts it out is called Vital Smarts.
Influencer.
Yeah.
Okay, as you write that down, Marcel, please note whatever recommendations are coming to you in the chat. And I know we have Wendy. I would call on you now, Wendy, as I wrap up from Marcel. And thank you, Marcel. And you made a comment that I need to reiterate, and that is that very often, and you place it in the context of fairness. And it makes me want to say that if I had begun any feedback without speaking to the positive impact of the feedback, then I too need to examine fairness. Right? I heard it, and it made me think that we tend to think that we're here for critical appraisal and not sometimes to just say, well done. And just about every attempt, and it doesn't mean being untrue to self, but there is something positive in just about everything. I have come to learn in academia that if we look, there is something positive in everybody's contribution. And I commend you on that. Wendy, would you like to go ahead now? I'm keeping Noel for the last. Last in, last out, Noel.
Okay. All right. Does everybody see that okay?
Yes, and I love the choice of that old what do you call it, the manuscript kind of frame there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, mine is kind of short and sweet. Led to teach, how God opened the door to my purpose. Let's see. So I had my own plans, thought I knew what I wanted to do, what God wanted me to do. Started kind of making plans about what I thought God wanted me to do, and ended up figuring out that God wanted me to go a whole different direction. I think it started with my compassion for the homeless. There's an increasing homelessness in my community. A lot of people are setting up tents in the woods and just living in tents. A lot of them are suffering mental health issues and drug addiction issues. And I just have a great compassion for those people. And I kind of created this vision of trying to decrease that problem, decrease poverty. It just became something that, I just envisioned myself doing. And then my compassion for struggling young adults. And so I thought that I would open up this organization called Living Bridges, where I would teach young adults life skills in order to kind of break that cycle of homeless and poverty. But God refused to open that door for me. And so what this class kind of forced me to do is just to kind of look back. And when I looked back into my life, I saw that children were always present around me. And I always loved children. I always held the babies. I was always the babysitter. And when I first started going to college, I had this dream of opening up my own preschool. And so my sphere of influence right now, as I go into teaching, is the administration. So I have an administration that oversees what I do. And then families, I will get to connect with the families of my students, other teachers, and of course the kids that I will be teaching. And so right now, currently, I'm just getting started with the direction that God has actually taken me. He closed the door to the organization for now, but has led me in to teaching. So I just started teaching this year. Yet today was my first day teaching. So I was actually working as a substitute for the district for the past 3 years, but this year I got my first real classroom, and trying to implement everything that I've learned. And the picture you see there is really what my brain feels like. And then taking everything like that's in my head and then making it a reality. And that's a challenge that I'm kind of struggling with today. It's just to take all that cluttery information and organizing it and then making it a reality. My relationships, building a strong foundation. I believe that relationships are very, very, very important, and that's what builds your foundation. So forming relationships with administration, other teachers, families, and kids that's going to be my number one focus, is just forming relationships with them, building rapport, and showing them God's love. And I believe that's the strong foundation, and what I will be building upon as I learn and as I grow as a teacher. Spiritual formation, I have a lot of growing still to do. One thing I struggle with is caring about what other people think of me, and that is something that I am actually slowly starting to get over. It's something that's like really held me back all of my life, and so that's something that I've always struggled with. But I think I'm finally, slowly getting over all of that. Still have a ways to go, but I'm getting there. I need to be more outspoken and confident in myself. That's always held me back. And I'm struggling with that still, but I'm starting to see myself, overcome those things. And then unlearning some things that I have believed about myself is another one. And of course, obedience to God's laws is a really important one to me, because God's laws are about love, loving others, and loving Him, and how to go about doing that in His way. And so being obedient to His will and His ways will also help me, and has been helping me to overcome a lot of those things that I just mentioned. So my academic plan is to follow God's lead instead of trying to do my own thing and making and trying to guess, okay, I think that God wants me to do this. I've learned to see in a different way, in a different perspective, and to follow God's lead instead of my own lead, and to focus. So my plan is to focus on my career for a year, and then just continue to follow God and see where He leads me, and trust in Him, and then revisit a doctorate in educational leadership next year. So I think my plan is to just stop school altogether for now and just take a break and focus on my career, and then revisit a doctorate later. And on my picture, I say focus on the solution and not the problem. And that's always been like a little motto of wisdom that I've always gone by, and that's helped me significantly throughout my life. And I got it out of a book that I read, and it's called The Wizard's First Rule. It's like a fantasy novel, unconventional, but a lot of good stuff in there I learned back in the day when I was into that kind of thing. And so that really helped me. Still into that kind of thing. I still like those fantasy novels. So I'm a geek. But anyway, that's it. Short and sweet. Now criticize and feedback. Thank you.
You're ending with a bang, Wendy. You're ending with a bang. And I really agree with you. It was short and sweet. I think if I listened to Dr. Hertz's comments on Andrew, he would have similar comments for you. He used the phrase. I rather feel, though, that I can see purpose in this course, because you've ended this course very definite, as if you, through this process, you have defined a path, and you are very confident about the trajectory, and I am grateful to God and happy for you, missing you, and at the same time, grateful to God for your having come through, and congratulations on being your first day. We celebrate that with you. We don't have wine to shake a glass at you, but to have you present on a day like today, you should sleep crash when all of this is over. I want to believe that as you go through the various chapters, you will be fleshing this out more deeply. You will be reflecting on the material you have read. You will interact with it in ways that will bring meaning. And I want to suggest to you that you do this timely. I understand that right now you have to focus on day one at school, and at least day 30, and get your rhythm, and give yourself time to do this, and do this with the level of the expectation you have of yourself is so high that you want to give yourself time to do this in a way that you continue to unearth your trajectory. All right, Dr. Ert, over to you.
Well, thank you, Wendy. Congratulations on this milestone. My son is a teacher, and so is my daughter-in-law, and so I know they tell me about their adventures in the teaching world. Yeah, the interesting thing in the presentation was how suddenly at the very last slide, a very clear path jumped out there, and it was clear enough that I'm sure that some people can agree or disagree with it. But one thing that came to mind, since you said you're called to focus on your career, what do you understand right now about careers in teaching? About managing your career. Have you gotten to that point yet of gaining some understanding on how careers in education progress and how to succeed?
Kind of, I do. I'm kind of learning as I go. Really, before I would always say, well, I think God is leading me here. I think he wants me to do this. And then what I've learned is that I can't really say that. I can't really make assumptions. And I just have to kind of just go with the flow and follow him as doors open up, just walk through those doors. And at this point, I really don't know where he's going to lead me. I can say that maybe he's going to lead me into some sort of leadership position. But then again, I can't say that. I can't make assumptions to that. I mean, maybe he will and maybe he won't. But even if he doesn't and I end up being a teacher for like 25 years, I know that I will be transforming lives, and I will be doing, through the people that I'm communicating with, my sphere of influence, in different and various ways, just because of who God is in me and how I express him to others. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. One thing to continue to reflect on as you, I would suggest holding on to this presentation and using it as something of a life diary along with the other material that you have here, because you'll have opportunities to reflect on your on the teaching profession as you go forward. And one of the tensions that you'll find that I suspect that you're already starting to wrestle with is the difference between a career and a calling. And as you think about getting into administration or remaining to teach, and you use phrases like it doesn't matter because I'll be changing lives anyway, I think you're starting to notice that tension. And what you want to do to get back on my little hobby horse is to keep driving to clarity, driving to focus and continue reflecting and thinking about how all these things are moving you forward. All the influences around you, the experiences God puts in front of you, and that can help you address that potential tension between the idea of career versus the idea of calling.
So are you saying that it could happen that my calling could be different than my career, and maybe I'm not seeing something, or
it's just that I've encountered a lot of people who are more career focused, and they start thinking more in terms of what will advance my career.
Okay.
And getting their ticket punched and getting the right jobs.
Okay.
As opposed to saying what my calling in teaching is transformed lives in this regard. And you have some vision about transformed lives. Well, you can achieve those with teaching, or you can also achieve it through administration. But if you're thinking more in terms of career, you start to think it's real easy to start to think in terms of, all right, what do I need to do to get my national certification? What do I need in teaching? What do I need to do to become a vice principal? And there's a slight difference in mindset there.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Any thoughts, Wendy? You may write that in the Zoom chat, and let us go to Noel. I'm sure you want to get out of here soon, so we'll move on to you now, Noel. Wendy, will you please stop sharing? Thanks. At the very bottom of your screen, you just have to hit stop share and you'll be okay. Thank you. Noel, you're on.
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. We're
I am.
seeing your PowerPoint and we're actually seeing the conclusion. So,
Yes. So I'm from the start here. I am happy that I did made it back on time to be in this presentation. As I had said to you that I was between traveling from United States, Panama, and then back to Guyana. My focus for this outline would lead me into my doctoral dissertation. And so I thought that I should give some bit of information as to what are some of the things that are kind of worrying me that I will seek to research on in my final project. And I think it's relevant in this whole aspect that we are doing here that talks about the personal assessment. And so this aspect of the teenage pregnancy, the single mothers, the aspect of family life education, I think it's necessary for me to use it in my introduction because I'm going to rely heavily on this tool to ensure that I can capture the group that I want to focus on that are going through some challenges at this point in time. My slide 3 talks about chapter 1, and our chapter 1 has a number of books that we would have read, but I particularly have some kind of a received some, as I read, some information from Andy Crouch and culture making and some other information in terms of servant leadership, for which would be the course that I would be following that can lead me into the whole global aspect. And the Jenkins and the Bill Hendricks, those are some of the books that I will incorporate later on into my into this project and into my other project. Chapter 2, the life vision. I've gone back to a very early age, to my parents, to my exposure to the whole aspect of biblical teachings, to me accepting Christ, to some of the servant things that I would have started in from a Sunday school scenario, teaching, leading prayers, bringing the message every now and again. I think all of that was part and parcel of the calling and part and parcel of the whole vision. And so I want to embrace transforming a local family, city, region, tribal, or specific democratic subculture. And that in itself speaks to what I want to do if I'm going to think about teenage pregnancy, unwed, unplanned pregnancy, divorce, suicide. Those are some of the areas that I have to get into. I think this personal assessment has allowed me to realize that I am called to care for humankind. I'm called to care for humankind. And I'm very specific about the whole aspect of humankind because when I go over to slide 3, we will see why I feel personally that God has positioned me to deal with people. And that's what I've been doing from early age. I want to encourage people not to forget values that are set in the principles of God. And I think it comes as part of the calling. And I think it behooves us to understand that if we are in Christ and we are going to be servant leaders or people of transformation, we got to understand that we're going to set in these principles, which brings out the whole aspect of integrity and all of the other things that we so love to talk about. Chapter 5, slide 5, chapter 3, the communication. And I said that I will bring it out in this one. I started a pupil teacher between age 16 and 17. people again. I did some work at age 16, 17, and some of the things that Andrew is doing. I did some woodwork and some aspect of technical drawing and some metal work. And so I understand that from a very early age, how to form things, make things, and how to relate with persons in certain setting. Then my whole medical background started in nursing and midwifery. Again, people, again, being right there, bringing people into the world. It's such an awesome scene. And so again, I think that my calling is here to care for humanity. I'm a producer of a television program, current television, for the last 6 years. And I've used this television program again to talk about things, and I will talk about that a little later on, some of the facets of the television program. As head of organization, I have written 1 or 2 articles, things to do with the church, in particular, Christian perspective of HIV and AIDS. That was when HIV and AIDS was something that I think the church couldn't understand. I've written a little bit of paper to ensure that I get them to understand the sciences and not to go back to think that it may be a curse or what have you. Aspects of baptism and child abuse, those are some of the common things that we will find in divorce. We can get abuse there. Those teen pregnancies, we will get abuse there. And I will encourage myself to do further writing, maybe a book, maybe chapters, maybe to speak at different forums. I use my television to do that, but outside of my television program, I would want to interact with people at different levels, because what I'm doing or about to do dictates that I speak to people at different levels. The chapter 4 talks about my current ministry. And here again, people in charge of 2 congregations. And then this is what I use my television program for. I use it to talk about social issues, health issues, preventative actions of those issues. My son is a pastor, and I had him with me 2 weeks ago before I left Guyana. And we talk about some very important things. And I think this ties in smugly with care for humanity. I want to help persons to develop skill-based programs. So work along with persons to develop skill-based programs, to have a area to refer persons to those established organizations. Like we have an organization for persons at the poverty level, or persons who are homeless, that they can go to home and shelter. So to work along with these people, that I can refer persons there. Pregnancy sometimes cause a young girl to be thrown out of the home, out of the church. And so we have to find a place to help them to come back into society. To improve the current mission of care, to focus on the trauma of unwed teens, divorce and suicide, find safe spaces for victims, set up counsel for victims and caregivers. And so these are all part of what I do on a small scale, counseling at a different level. But in this scenario, I think it's going to be more widespread, where I talk to more persons who are going through some of these challenges. Chapter 4, the relationships. I think it's the mission that I'm on is a very sensitive one. And I know for sure I cannot do it alone. And I need to build partner with national and international organizations every step of the way. I need to work with Ministry of Education. And so, Marcel, I'm going to have to work with you. I'm going to have to work with Ministry of Health. I'm going to have to work with UNICEF, Pan American Health Organization, church leaders, and the congregations. We can't leave out the congregations, because all of your congregations, they have people within the community, and they know somebody who have a challenge with teenage pregnancy, somebody who is unwed, and is pregnant, and somebody who has been divorced or has been abused. And then I want to increase my prayer and supplication line to break barriers and to open doors, to strengthen my feebleness, and to lead my steps into unknown paths. Because I'm not too sure what I'm going to get when I'm getting into this. But I know we have a challenge, and I know somebody got to start somewhere to work on it. And since my calling is caring for humanity, I think I'm going to take up that challenge. Invite victims to interact with the public on my television program. I know this will take quite a lot, but I am hoping to achieve that. That will do a number of things: reduce stigma. It would also encourage love despite the circumstances. And it also help in the transformation of the cultural odds. And the cultural odds can be explained maybe in pages, but it has to do with how people look at things that may not be the right way, how people celebrate things that are sometimes not the right things. They don't even understand what is it they're celebrating. And so some of those cultural odds, I will have a platform to try to unravel them and to bring people down to a better place. Chapter 6 deals with the spiritual formation. God has a plan in this spiritual formation. It is critical. It is critical. I left out a word here. I'm not too sure whether I left out a word. Well, it should be. It's critical in my circumstances and for what I want to do. I am an extrovert, confrontational. We know communication. We talk about the confrontation of communication in good ways and bad ways. I'm very bold. I speak the truth without compromise. Maybe this is my dark side. And so I need to have this relationship with God and with those who He send around me, maybe to help me to say, cool down, don't compromise, but maybe don't be so very bold. I'm not too sure. Life as a believer and as a servant of His people, giving selfless service, no gains or only pains. I'm preparing for that. I have begun to do that, experience pain, try not to get gains, do it selflessly so there's no gain attached to it. It's all part of what I think is the whole aspect of the spiritual formation. I need all the prayers for launching this new part. Our formation cannot go without prayers, and I need all the prayers. In this whole chapter 7, the action plan, well, unfortunately, I've been working alone. I don't want to blame anybody for that, but I'm hoping that my PLCs would kick in shortly. And I think I have word that may have a meeting with them, I think next week for the first time. But I hope that they will come on board as part of the plan. They will join with my wife and other family members and friends to give me the needed support, because I think I need that at this particular time. I also need mentorship in the specifics of research writing. Yes, I'm going to do sometime later on research methodology, but I think mentoring and mentorship is something different. And I need to get there. Or Marcel talked a lot about his skill in research, and so maybe Marcel, I will seek some of your guidance in terms of some of the specifics. I'm hoping to complete in the 3-year designated period. Complete the courses, start the dissertation, and try to look at either this topic or a topic close to this, reducing the impact of unwedded teenage pregnancies and the downside of suicide and divorce and families. I think this capture everything about people and caring for people. and it will also capture what stimulates me or hurt me most or make me feel sad the most when I see a 12, 15, 16-year-old pregnant. And because I was a midwife many years ago, I actually was in the delivery room with them. And so I know the trauma that some of them goes through. And my final slide has to do with conclusion. I want to start with the professors and to conclude here. The professors of this course were awesome as they help us to transition from that point of selfishness. I think I came rather selfish. I can do this, I can do that, I've been this, I've been that. But I think this course has changed all of that and says that you can do this and that and that. You're doing it in Christ, but you got to ensure that people are there with you. It has given me a new understanding of my life. I highlighted those areas that I did not pay much attention because I thought they were insignificant. I'm in a better place now, and I will try to be successful in the remaining courses and finally be a BGU graduate. And will use the knowledge to facilitate a change of culture that caused me grief and pain, the suicide, the abuse. Yes, I'm sure that God will be my guide and my help. So this is my presentation, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Noel, and thank you to all of you who have patiently stayed with us to the very last presenter, right? I wanted to just mention to you that you have one of your countrymen who've done extensive breakthrough research on suicide, and you may want to work along with Johanne Roland, if you have come to know that name. She graduated last year, but has been pretty much on this circuit throughout countries in consultation with that work which she did, which was depth research and analysis. So you spoke about partnership as being a theme running through your slides, and that's some resource. I like the idea that you are thinking about collaborating with even your own class members here in terms of seeking help to strengthen the areas that you need strengthening. Thank you for a well thought out presentation, and thank you also for adding the very question that we asked at the beginning. You gave your feedback in the conclusion, so we do not have to ask you to give that feedback now because we actually have it in writing. I'll stop there. Dr. Ert add is 2 seconds worth and allow Wendy to stop wiping the sleep away as we move. Marcel, I sent you a very important message. I hope you're here. I'd love you to respond to me before we leave the room. Dr. Hurt.
Well, thank you, Noel. I saw a couple of interesting slides there. One was your diverse experiences. What are some things that have been helping you synthesize them, and how they help you pursue a single calling?
Well, I think that each one of the areas that I have been trained in has a link with the other one. general nursing, for example, is linked with caring for persons. Midwifery in itself is deeper care. It's doing deliveries, birthing of babies, and caring for mother and child from that tender age. And then in the whole aspect of the church, it is also caring for babies, the baptism of babies, the caring for families, the counseling of families, the whole aspect of helping young people in my own congregation to understand. And why I'm touched about this is because a few of my young people would have gotten pregnant. And I have seen growing up that young persons, my age group, at the then time who had gotten pregnant, how they were pushed aside. And even though the church was supposed to take care of them, the church acted as judge. And so in all of what I do, even now as head of department in health sciences, again, it has to do with children and people, caring, nurturing, teaching, helping them to understand life. So I think all of what I had done so far, and maybe the Lord knew that, so He lined me up from pretty young in that area where I can deal for persons.
That's interesting, and I think that's one of the things the course is designed to bring out in you, is this ability to find these themes in diverse experiences. Because when you look at your slide of the different things you've done, you can go anywhere in any direction,
yes.
And yet that
yes.
pattern emerged from it. So
yeah,
thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
All for your patience with us tonight. We've gone 2 hours and 27 minutes. That's a lot of time. I certainly appreciate those who stayed with us. Marcel, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Yvonne.
Notice the chat. Can you respond, please?
I sent you a mail.
Oh, you sent me a mail. Okay, thank you. Alrighty. Thank you all so much for your presentation, for helping us to learn. Because in every presentation, we who are listening to you are in fact learners as well. And as we guide you, we learn how to guide others, and we learn how to do what we do better. So I appreciate you all. I appreciate your contribution. I appreciate the time I spent with you in these 9 weeks, and I'm sure Dr. Hurt would say the same. I would ask you to dig deep, to read widely, to be not afraid to agree, disagree with some of the concepts that you have come across, and to merge this all together in this discovery of self-calling, and more importantly, to think about the vision of where to from here. I've been asking the question of you, how will you know when it is done? How will you know when it is done? It's one thing to want to change the world, but it's another thing to not being able to envision the shape of that change and to know how you are progressing with the transformation that you envision. So as you contemplate your project, contemplate measurements, contemplate evaluation, contemplate assessment, contemplate redesign, all of which is the process of moving from one level to the next and to the next. So I ask you to do that. My prayers and blessings go with you as you move to the other levels of your adventurous academic plan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you. You've brought us safely to this next level, and we thank you. We're grateful to you for your guidance. We're grateful for the ways in which you've opened up for us new understanding, new visions of you. You've clarified for us, and you've even placed us at places where we have more questions than answers. But we know that you're with us on this journey, and with you all is well. And so we thank you for the professors that have come along to join us, and we thank you for every one of us as learners who you are equipping for your call. Use us, mold us, build us, and fill us to your glory. Amen. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye. I hope to meet you in other classes along the way. And Wendy, it's not goodbye. It's not goodbye. Okay. Bye, all.